Hi everyone. Okay, I think I'm going to leave the theory from Capablanca where it's at now. We've seen the best and most instructive parts of the book anyway. And what I'd like to move on to now is some actual games from Capablanca himself, so you can see him in action for yourselves. In this game he had the white pieces against Jaime Baca Arus. It was played in Havana in 1912 at a blindfold exhibition match. Kappa opened with d4, after which came d5, e3, e6 and bishop d3, which is going into a collie system setup after the moves c6, knight f3, bishop d6 and knight b d2. Kappa used to use the collie system in his younger days, and it can generate some crushing kingside attacking chances with sacrifices like bishop takes h7 once the black king is castled, commonplace as we saw in some of the previous videos, and perhaps Arus was anticipating such an attack because here he played f5, which shuts out the action of the bishop but also creates a backward pawn on e6 and a hole at e5, so it's perhaps not the wisest continuation. Anyway, the game continued with c4, which is an immediate thrust to exploit the weakness at e5. If c takes d here, then white can recapture with his knight and later move either of his knights into e5, which would be a very strong central post to them. Arus didn't capture here though, and instead played queen f6, which defends e5, so it's not a bad idea, but really the kingside knight belongs on f6, and it's generally bad to make queen moves early in the opening stages. Kappa answered with b3, which is preparing to fianchetto on the queen side, which will prove decisive later in the game. It also makes it more difficult for black to free his game by playing e5 at a later stage. Then came knight h6 in order to make castling possible, but as I said, the knight really belongs on f6, and Capablanca's better central control, partly as a result of this, will be decisive later. So then came bishop b2, black castled, queen c2, and knight d7. And then Kappa played h3, which is to stop any knight g3 ideas, and usually pawn moves like this are a bad idea in the opening, but seeing as his opponent has opened badly, it's not too dangerous, as he's unlikely to lose any initiative as a result. On the contrary, his pieces are much better developed and ready for action. In particular, black's light square bishop is a very bad piece. So now he played g6, which is, well, amongst other things, presumably so the f-pawn can move without the threat of bishop takes h7 plus check, but this is a major concession really, playing g6. Not only does it create two further holes in black's defense at f6 and h6, but it also weakens badly the long diagonal, and although this isn't a problem at the moment because it is pawn on d4, when the game opens up it could become a serious problem, and it does, as you'll see. It may have been okay if black had got his bishop to g7, but there was no time for that, as Capablanca is quick to castle and then generate a fierce attack. And he castled long, and if we look at the position now, all of white's pieces are geared towards black's king, and Arus had evidently presumed Kappa would castle kingside, where he would have some attacking chances himself. And now that he's castled queenside, white definitely has the better chances, especially considering black's dubious development. And here he played e5, and it was really the wrong time to open up the center, although, the threat of e4 ensures a little initiative, but the opening of the game favors white strongly. So d takes e5, knight takes e5, c takes d5, c takes d5. And now Kappa played an unexpected and unusual looking move. He has the advantage in any case, but here he wanted to avoid exchanges, for example knight takes e5, and he found a very creative way to continue with knight c4, which is threatening to win black's very important dark squared bishop, considering the weaknesses he has on this long diagonal. And moving the bishop is no good because there's 3 pieces now attacking the knight on e5, so it will just lose a piece. And so it's really best to accept the sacrifice, and that's what Arus played with d takes c4. And now comes bishop takes c4 check. And capturing with the knight, of course, is not an option because black would lose his queen. And the opening of the d file here, along with the initiative to come, ensures white very good compensation for the temporary material deficit. And I say temporary because he'll be able to rectify that in a moment with a nice combination. Arus played knight hf7, which is, a logical idea, bringing the knight back into the game. But now Capa gets almost all of his material back with rook takes d6. And after queen takes d6, knight takes e5. And this knight can't recapture because it's pinned. And now Capa is only a pawn down, but the strength of his position and initiative more than compensates. In particular, his bishop on b2 is now a very powerful piece, probably worth at least a rook, objectively speaking. And the threat that begins the initiative here is knight takes f7, winning the exchange. So bishop e6 is a logical defense. But now Capa brings his only inactive piece into the fray with the rook d1, which ensures further initiative, and now white has a big advantage. The queen is tied to the defense of the bishop here on e6, and queen e7 is black's best hope at defending. But now comes another great move from Capa. If you want to try and spot it, then stop the video now. There are a few good moves for white here. As I said before, once you get your pieces into strong positions, there are many paths to victory. Queen c3 and knight d7 are both great moves for white here, but the strongest is the powerful exchange sacrifice, rook d7, which is threatening the queen, and the queen is still tied to the defense of the bishop, and moving the queen is not an option. Like, for example, if queen e8, then it's a forced mate in 6 with knight takes f7, and after queen takes f7, queen c3, threatening mate on h8. So queen f6, and now bishop takes e6 check, and it's all over for black. His best hope is rook f7, but now bishop takes f7 check, king f8, queen takes f6, and he can only delay it. Rook c8 check, and now bishop c4 with discovered check from the queen, king e8, and queen e7 is mate. So Arus accepted the sacrifice of bishop takes d7, and Capa played knight takes d7 with big advantage. Another possibility here was knight takes g6 with the threat of queen c3, and this forces queen f6 due to the threat of queen c3, but of course it's losing because of bishop takes f6. If instead h takes g6, now queen c3, and it's a force mate in 2 because black can't defend both g7 and h8. But anyway, what Capa played was knight takes d7, and his opponent played rook fc8, and he can't capture the knight because, again, queen c3 is absolutely winning and forces mate. Once more, black has no way to defend both g7 and h8. All he can do is delay the mate with something crazy like queen d1 check, and after king takes d1, rook fd8 check, king e2, rook d2 check, queen takes d2, and so on. Eventually he can give no more checks, and white can simply move in for the kill. So rook fc8, and now queen c3. Finally the move is played in the game, and it's completely hopeless for black. He tried rook takes c4, offering some material back and at least freeing his knight to move, but after b takes c4 he resigned, as it's still completely hopeless. For example, to stop the mate, he can play knight e5, but now comes knight takes e5, and it's only a matter of time and technique. So that's it. A great game from Capa, especially considering he was blindfolded. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.